I've spent most of my adult life unlearning the idea that my mother loved me. Judith, my mother, although I rarely use that word for her, was a master of performance, long before I had the language to name it or describe it. As a kid, I didn't know what manipulation meant. I just knew that somehow, no matter what happened, I always ended up being the problem. If I came home upset because another kid pushed me at recess, she'd sigh and say, "Stephen, you're too sensitive. If you weren't so difficult, kids wouldn't pick on you." If I got an A- instead of an A, she'd purse her lips, disappointed. "Sounds like you're slipping. You always were lazy." It was never overt cruelty that even a kid might recognize as unacceptable. It was never bruises or screaming fits. It was quieter than that, more insidious. Every joy I had was second-guessed. Every failure was magnified. She liked to frame me as troubled, just enough to gain sympathy as a long-suffering mom, not enough that anyone expected her to actually take me to a therapist, which, with a mother like her, I probably would have benefited from. No, I was troubled just enough that I always had to be apologizing for being who I was. Always sorry that she had to put up with me. It's hard to explain this kind of damage to people with more fortunate parents, because no one incident is that bad. But years of this treatment, week after week through your formative years, it leaves scars. When I got older, I thought distance would help. College gave me breathing room, and for a while I believed I could balance both lives, building my independence while still being the dutiful son. I had friends and professors who respected me, and for the first time I felt like I was beginning to shed the skin of the difficult child image my mother had sculpted. Then came Claire. Claire and I were together for 4 years. She was kind, sharp-witted and smart, and patient with me in ways I hadn't even realized I needed. With her, I began to imagine a life where I wasn't the broken son or the scapegoat. She gave me glimpses of a family dynamic that wasn't poisoned by constant guilt. We talked about our futures together. Grad school, maybe living abroad. Children, if it came to that. But Judith could never stand to see me happy in ways she couldn't control. It started subtly. "She's nice, but she doesn't really get you, does she?" Or, "I noticed she doesn't make much effort with me at all. Don't you think that's rude?" Little seeds of doubt, watered daily. I brushed it off at first. Everyone jokes about the mother who doesn't like the girlfriend, but Judith didn't just dislike Claire, she worked to dismantle her. I remember the night it all came crashing down. I'd just come home from campus, exhausted, and Judith called me. Her voice was low, urgent. She said she didn't know how to tell me this, but she'd seen Claire out with another man. She sounded heartbroken for me, half whispering like she was sharing a terrible secret she wished she didn't have to bear. "I only tell you because I can't stand to see you made a fool of, Stephen. You deserve honesty." And I didn't question her. Not right away. That's the part that still stings the most. For all my training in psychology that I was getting in college, all my study of human behavior, and my efforts to understand my childhood and the dynamics with my mom, I was still her son. And she still knew exactly how to bypass my defenses. I confronted Claire. She was devastated. Confused and furious I could even think such a thing. We fought hard. I demanded explanations that she couldn't give, and she begged me to trust her. But the seed had been planted, and I watered it with my own fear. By the time I realized Judith had lied, fabricated the entire thing, with no evidence, no witnesses, nothing but her well-rehearsed tone of maternal concern, it was too late. Claire was gone. She told me she couldn't be with someone who believed his mother's crazy stories over her word. And she was right. Losing her just about destroyed me, but I cannot blame her. I cut off contact with Judith not long after I graduated. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming match, no final confrontation. I just stopped answering, changed my number, moved for work, and didn't tell her where. For years, the silence was bliss. I built a life she couldn't contaminate. Eventually, I earned my doctorate, started teaching at a university far from the one I'd first studied at, and bought a house with my own savings. I surrounded myself with colleagues and friends who saw me as capable, intelligent, and even, dare I say, kind. Every once in a while, I'd feel the ache of what I'd lost. Not just Claire, though she haunted me, but the idea of a mother who could have been different, a mother who could have supported instead of sabotaged. But then I'd remember her voice, the casual way she'd twisted my life into knots, and the ache would harden into resolve. I had no intention of ever seeing her again. Which is why, when my uncle called me one late evening and told me Judith was gravely ill, that she might not make it, I felt my stomach drop, not from grief, but from suspicion. It was nearly midnight. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity and an ingrained sense of duty got the better of me. "Stephen?" The voice on the other end was low, gravelly. It took me a moment to place it. Uncle Raymond, my mother's older brother. I hadn't spoken to him in more than a decade. "Yeah, this is Stephen." My voice was cautious, already bracing. There was a pause, a weighted silence. "I don't know how else to say this. It's your mother. She's not well. The doctors don't think she has much time." My chest tightened, though again, not with grief, but with the familiar sense of coming drama. "What's wrong with her?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "She says it's a tumor in her brain. I guess the bills are piling up, and she asked me to call you." I pinched the bridge of my nose, staring at the dark ceiling of my bedroom. "She asked you," I repeated. "Not the doctors, not the hospital, but you to be the one to call me." Raymond hesitated. "Look, I don't know the details. She doesn't tell me much, but she's in a bad way, Stephen. If you want to make peace, now's the time." Make peace. Ironically, peace was what I had built in her absence. Contacting her again would be like opening a locked door and inviting a hurricane inside. Yet something in me, maybe old guilt, wouldn't let it go. I lay awake long after Raymond hung up, staring into the darkness. If she was really sick, if death actually was looming, did I want the last thing between us to be silence? And so, against every instinct that screamed at me to leave the past buried, I found myself flying across the country the next weekend and driving the rental car to the modest house she still lived in. It looked smaller than I remembered, peeling paint on the porch, the garden wild and overgrown. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. When the door opened, she looked mostly unchanged. Older, yes, but not frail, not sickly. Her hair was dyed the same brittle shade of red. Her makeup was done. She clutched the door frame as though holding herself upright took all her strength. "Stephen," she choked, hand pressed dramatically to her chest. "My baby." I stood there, expression flat. "Hello, Judith." Her eyes shimmered. "Judith," she repeated softly. "Not Mom?" I stepped past her into the hallway, noting the interior was not much changed. She shut the door behind me with exaggerated slowness. "You've grown into such a hard man. Life must have been cruel to you without me." "Life," I said lightly, dropping my bag onto a chair, "has been peaceful." Her lips tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she shuffled toward the kitchen table, where a neat stack of papers was waiting. Bills. She gestured weakly, as if the sight of them exhausted her. "It's all so overwhelming," she murmured. $86,000, Stephen, and that's just the start. The treatments they say I need, experimental, but maybe my only chance." I pulled out a chair, sat across from her, and lifted the first bill. I scanned it carefully, dissecting the details. Things didn't add up. Wonky formatting, inconsistent dates, and hospital names I didn't recognize. The hospital closest to her was a teaching hospital that was considered top of its class, so why would she be going anywhere else, let alone multiple anywhere else's? It didn't make sense. "Which hospital is this from?" I asked, tapping one of the bills. She pressed a hand to her temple. "Oh, I can't remember all the details, darling. The doctors, the scans, the tests, so many things." "Then let me come with you to your next appointment," I said. "I'll talk to your doctor myself." "Oh, no," she said quickly. "No, no, no. I just couldn't bear for you to see me like that. All those tubes, the tests, it's too awful. I just need you to trust me." I gave a humorless laugh. "You'll forgive me if trust isn't exactly the foundation of this relationship." Her face crumpled. "You're punishing me. Even now when I'm dying, you can't let go of the past. I gave you life, Stephen. I sacrificed everything for you." There it was, the script I'd heard 1,000 times. "I gave you life. You owe me." "You sabotaged me," I half snarled, trying to hang on to my temper. "You lied to me about Claire. You lied to me for years. But now you want me to believe this? $86,000 for a treatment you can't even name?" She wobbled in her chair as if my words had physically struck her. "I don't expect you to understand. You've always been ungrateful, difficult. But I'm still your mother, and mothers deserve to be cared for." I sat back, crossing my arms. "Show me proof, real proof, or I walk out that door and you never see me again." For a moment, the mask slipped. Her eyes hardened to steel, but just for a half second. Then the act resumed. Her hand fluttered to her forehead. Her voice dropped to a faint murmur. I feel so faint." Her body slumped sideways. It was theatrical, almost laughably so, but she committed to it, sliding from her chair onto the rug. I knelt automatically, checking her pulse, watching her breathing. Both looked steady, normal. "Judith," I said flatly, "you're fine." She remained limp, her lips parted in a dainty sigh. I sighed, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. When the paramedics arrived, they gave her a quick once-over. Vitals normal, oxygen levels fine, blood sugar levels fine, heart rate steady. "There's nothing wrong with her," one of them muttered to me quietly. As I watched the ambulance leave and got into my rental car to follow them, a strange calm settled over me. She hadn't changed, not a bit, and I had never been more certain that I wasn't going to give her a dime. After finding the room she'd been taken to, I waited not in the chair in her room, but outside in the hallway. I only entered when the attending physician arrived, a middle-aged man with a brisk demeanor. He looked over her chart and shook his head. "Vitals are fine, no neurological red flags, but we'll get some blood and run a couple tests. I just don't see anything to worry about." Judith stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She gasped softly, as though waking from a coma. "Doctor, am I going to be okay?" I stepped closer. "Could you maybe tell me about this brain tumor that my mother has?" The doctor's brows knitted. "Tumor? Well, Perhaps she was being treated outside our system, but in the records I have, I don't see any imaging, no oncology notes, no, I mean nothing that would suggest that. He looked up at me and then at her. Ma'am, have you been seen here for that? Judith's eyes darted around and then filled with tears. Oh, those records must be somewhere else, another hospital. They're probably delayed. I felt a cold wave of clarity wash over me. This was it. The con laid bare, unraveling under the simplest of scrutiny. I kept my expression blank and my tone polite until the doctor had left, and then I turned to her. You've been lying. She gasped, clutching her chest. How can you say that? I'm sick, Stephen. I just don't want you to see me waste away. I don't want you to have to be involved. No, I said firmly. What you didn't want was for me to talk to a doctor, because then your little stack of fake bills and dramatic fainting spells would fall apart. Her voice rose to a wail. You've always hated me. You've always wanted to believe the worst about your own mother. After everything I gave you, my youth, my health, my life, you stand here and call me a liar? You didn't give me your life, I snapped. You spent mine. You took from me every chance you got. And now you want $86,000 for an illness you can't even prove exists. Her sobs grew louder, but I knew all her different ways of crying, and I knew this wasn't real. You should be ashamed, I continued. Faking brain cancer to squeeze money out of your son. Do you even realize how wrong this is? Her sobs stopped instantly. For a moment the mask cracked again. It was the second time that night that she let the truth show, and I thought that maybe in her older age her acting skills were beginning to fail her. But the act did resume right away, of course. You'll regret this, she moaned. When I'm gone, you'll wish you had helped me. You'll remember this moment for the rest of your life. No, I said quietly. I'll remember this as the moment I succeeded in not giving you the power to ruin me. And with that, I turned and walked out of the room, her wails chasing me down the sterile hallway. That night, I drove to the house in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the steady hum of the road beneath me. For years, I had imagined what my final confrontation with Judith might look like. Would it be shouting? Tears? Would I flee, crumpling under the weight of guilt? Or would I leave triumphant, chest puffed with victory? It wasn't either of those things. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic, like closing a book after reading the same miserable chapter too many times. I flew home the next day, feeling enormously relieved to return to my own home, to have many hundreds of miles between myself and Judith. My phone, though, had been on Do Not Disturb, and the number of texts, calls, and voicemails that had come in was absurd. At first I didn't even check them, but eventually curiosity got the better of me. I opened one voicemail, then another, and I noticed the arc they took. Stephen, she sobbed in one of the early ones, how could you abandon me like this? I'm your mother. A little later on, another one. I don't know how much longer I have. You'll never forgive yourself when I'm gone. And another still, one of the later ones, where her tone had shifted. You're heartless, cold. No wonder no one stays with you. You'll die alone, Stephen. Alone. I noticed how her tactics went from guilt to threat to hatred. I saved every message, not because I wanted them, but because they were evidence of who she was, of why I had chosen silence. And on the rare nights when doubt crept in, when the old voice whispered, maybe she really is sick, maybe you were too harsh, I would play them back and be reminded, no, I wasn't wrong. I had walked away from the hospital with nothing good or positive, no reconciliation, no healing, certainly no Hollywood ending. But what I did have was certainty. Certainty that my life was better without her. Certainty that my peace was mine to guard. And that was enough. Thanks for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed this reading, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Leave us a comment and let us know what kind of story you'd like to hear next. This is Tales by Rachel, where we breathe life into every story.